She discovered shelter in the wrong car 9 months later, an incredible baby revealed. Sarah Jensen stepped out into the frigid winter night, relieved to leave the noise of school behind, but unprepared for what would soon unravel. The glossy sheen of ice glimmered under the moonlight, creating an otherworldly beauty that contrasted with the turmoil gnawing at her heart. Lost in reverie, she approached what she thought was her car, her breath visible in the cold air. The door swung open, the warmth inside too inviting to resist. It wasn't her car. It was Chris's. Chris, a wandering artist caught in a drought of creativity, shifted in surprise as he caught sight of her. Their conversation ignited a spark, a warmth amidst Sarah's chill. They exchanged stories. She confessed her passion for painting a side of herself tucked away since her mother's passing. "I've never even displayed a canvas," Sarah admitted, her cheeks flushing with vulnerability. In the quiet of that car, stripped of noisy accolades and judgmental eyes, she found a refuge from the suffocating grief that clung to her like a shroud. Yet, each brush of hope nudged darker clouds of responsibility into her consciousness. She was 32 and age both poised and precarious. As a high school math teacher, walls adorned with student achievements loomed over her, merciless reminders of her unfulfilled potential. With every passing day, the pressure built, as her mother's legacy of unconditional love felt more like weights holding her down. She sought solace in art, craved it, yet an unshakable dread clung to her spirit. What if she failed? Before they continued, "I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the weeks passed, her heart danced between moments of clarity and fear. Chris pushed her, igniting talk of an art show to save her mother's studio, the very sanctuary filled with untapped potential. Yet, every brush stroke they shared pulled Sarah deeper into conflict, with Chris's belief in her weighed against her own crushing doubts. Could she live up to that vision? Could she finish what her mother had started? Then, like thunder on a clear day, that life-altering discovery shattered her fragile equilibrium: she was pregnant. A maelstrom of emotions erupted, with excitement intertwined with fear and societal expectations spiraling like a storm inside her. The idea of single motherhood loomed ominously, reminding her of the judgment she might face, a figure alone, unsupported. The truth of her situation felt like chains tightening around her vision of freedom as an artist. With every passing moment, her thoughts raced, muscles tense. What would become of the dream she had barely begun to reclaim? Desperation flickered within her, a pendulum swinging rapidly between wanting to dive into this new chapter of motherhood and the artistic legacy she so desperately longed to secure. While a new life was blooming inside her, the promise of her own identity fought to break free as well. The tension hung thick in the air, begging to be resolved, yet within her heart echoed no answers, just the heavy weight of unanswered questions. As labor pains gripped her body in a flurry of agonizing intensity, Sarah faced the moment she both dreaded and craved, the moment life would change irrevocably. Alone in the sterile hospital room, memories flooded her mind, her mother's laughter, her encouragement, and those soft whispers urging her to embrace both family and artistry. But in the night air, amid frantic breaths, one thought rang clear: what would she ultimately choose to be, an artist or a mother? A life of paint and canvas, or a life of crayon drawings on refrigerator doors? The blurring lines of her reality twisted like paint on a palette, begging her to decide before the dawn broke. The sterile hospital room was stripped of excess, yet it felt suffocating, all white walls and unyielding shadows. Sarah coughed through gritted teeth, waves of pain coursing through her, each contraction pulling her deeper into the foundations of her identity. Alone, she faced herself in the mirror, a reflection of a woman at the precipice of transformation. Her mind raced, dissecting the ramifications of motherhood paired with her unfulfilled desires. The haunting specter of her mother loomed, a constant reminder of what could be lost or gained. Each time the nurse checked on her, Sarah forced an assertive smile, a mask of calm shielding the tempest within. But when the nurse stepped out, the mask slipped, doubt surged like a fierce tide. Why had she allowed herself to unearth her artistic inclinations only to drown in obligations? Each brushstroke she hadn't taken became an accusation, an indictment of neglecting her true self. The dream of showcasing her paintings, of filling her mother's studio with life, now felt like a distant echo, drowned out by the thundering expectations of motherhood. As the pain intensified, so did her thoughts. In those moments of agony, clarity ignited. What if she could blend both worlds? Could she raise her child while simultaneously breathing life into her art? The image of a small hand smudging paint across a canvas ignited warmth within her, mixing joy with deep yearning. Was this a glimmer of hope, or just another illusion to shatter? The contractions surged again, and instinctively, she gripped the sheets, her breathing becoming shallow. Responsibility clawed at her insides, a snarling beast demanding submission. "I can't do this," she whispered to herself, as if the room could provide answers. Yet with that confession, a mix of anger and determination boiled just beneath the surface. In the isolation of her thoughts, she began to confront her own beliefs. Life hadn't delivered her neatly catalogued options. She couldn't merely choose to be one part of herself. This decision made her pulse quicken, the notion that she must abandon her artistic dreams for the caregiving role gnawed at her sanity. She thought of Chris, of the fiery conversations that sparked creativity. He had seen something in her that she had buried deep. In this raw moment nearing delivery, a crucial realization anchored itself within her, acknowledging the duality of her existence would not be betrayal but rather an evolution. When the next wave of pain hit, she didn't scream. She climbed aboard, riding it like an unstoppable force. Each contraction felt like a reminder to dig her heels into the earth beneath her. Soon, she would not be defined by a single label. She would forge her own path, a mosaic of motherhood and artistry woven into one being. The cries of a newborn suddenly echoed through the dim hospital room, shattering her frantic thoughts. It was an unmistakable sound, the arrival of the new life, a culmination of all she feared but also all she had longed for. Trembling, Sarah turned her focus inward. With one last surge of effort, she took hold of her purpose. This was not an end but a beginning, a shift toward the duality that would define her. As the moment settled around her, she held her child for the first time, a bundle of hope wrapped in potential. In that intimate silence, the air vibrated with possibilities, craving to spill forth onto canvases and into the art community that awaited her. Yet, buried beneath that warmth, a distant echo of guilt lingered. Would she truly have the strength to pursue both aspirations? With newfound resolve coursing through her veins, Sarah looked down into the tiny face cradled in her arms, a reflection of herself, an artist bridging two worlds. One crucial truth loomed large: the time had come to face her greatest fear. The fear of failure was nothing compared to the triumph of pursuing her identity. As the days passed, the sterile walls of the hospital gave way to the more chaotic environment of home. Sarah stood at the threshold of her new life, arms cradling her child while the world around her churned with expectations. The once muted ambition buried deep within her began to stir, uncoiling like the first tendrils of spring breaking through winter's grip. But as her mind raced with visions of balmy afternoons painting in the backyard, her heart grappled with the thrumming pulse of doubt. How would she navigate the volatile waters of motherhood and art? Sleep-deprived and overwhelmed, she settled into a rhythm that was both foreign and exhilarating. The warm cocoon of her home, with its muffled sounds and walls that confined rather than liberated, became the backdrop to her internal dialogue. Would the late-night inspiration still strike? Could the midnight oil burned for art coexist with the gentle cries of her baby? Every decision felt monumental, and with each passing moment, she weighed the preciousness of her time against the urgency to create. Taking a deep breath, she found herself at the living room table one evening, the familiar smells of linseed oil and turpentine igniting her dormant passions. The baby slept soundly nearby, the rhythmic rise and fall of his tiny chest offering a soothing cocoon that stifled her earlier fears. With careful strokes, she began sketching a landscape that danced vividly in her mind, a seascape washed in soft pastels, a summer storm holding the promise of renewal. Eyes tracing the lines made by the charcoal, she felt the electric spark of creativity latching on, whispering that she was, indeed, still an artist. But, of course, her life's new demands loomed just beneath the surface, an ever-present undertow. The quiet moments of creative bliss were repeatedly interrupted: a diaper to change, a bottle to prepare, a soft cry demanding attention. Each reprieve from art bred frustration. The clock mocked her ambitions, ticking in sync with her son's needs. As days turned into weeks, Sarah grappled with the dichotomy of her life. She envisioned walking her son through art galleries, introducing him to colors that spurred creativity as she made her own paintings. The idea of raising a child that appreciated art was intoxicating, yet she questioned her ability to execute this dream without neglecting him or her creative self. How could she set an example of perseverance while feeling lost in the labyrinth of motherhood? It happened one morning: an unexpected revelation triggered by a spilled tub of crayons scattered across the hardwood floor. Watching her son pick up the vivid hues, the colors strewn about like the chaos of her days, a light flickered. He giggled, a sound that felt like the first gust of wind after a thunderstorm, and Sarah realized something profound: she could create space for both motherhood and art, inviting her son to be a part of that journey. Inspiration doesn't have to be solitary, she thought, her fingers itching for the texture of a canvas. What if her child's presence infused her art with a new, unforeseen dimension? As her heart surged with excitement, the idea settled into her mind. She wouldn't merely navigate two separate identities but rather weave them seamlessly, allowing motherhood to shape her artistry. With each passing day, Sarah plotted her course. She would set aside time each week, inviting friends or Chris to help soothe the baby while she painted. She envisioned collaborative projects showcasing both her art and her child's, a vibrant blend of their worlds. But as she anticipated this new endeavor, a nagging fear resurfaced. What if resentment festered in her? What if creativity faded in the noise of parenting? The thought sent tremors of uncertainty coursing through her. Facing the increasingly blurred lines between her roles, she pondered one chilling question: how far could she stretch herself before she snapped? As another wave of anxiety washed over her, one clear truth remained: this uncharted journey demanded courage. To pursue her dreams while facing potential backlash and failure would not be easy, but it could yield a transformation beyond her wildest imagination. The doorbell rang, cutting through her thoughts. It was Chris, standing with an envelope in hand. "I have news," he said, and Sarah felt a thrill of anticipation. Perhaps this was the push she needed to start fully embracing both her worlds. What news awaited her? Would this be a catalyst for change or yet another hurdle? As Sarah opened the door, an electric tension buzzed in the air. Chris's eyes sparkled with a blend of trepidation and excitement. The envelope he held felt heavy, laden with unspoken possibilities. "What is it?" she asked, barely suppressing her eagerness. "The gallery downtown is hosting an open call for new artists. They want to feature emerging talent, and I thought of you," he said, his voice steady as he handed her the envelope. The words hung in the air, a tantalizing mixture of dread and elation surging through her. This was the chance she had hoped for, her mind racing with visions of her artwork gracing the walls beneath bright lights. But beneath the excitement lay a rumbling wave of fear. Would she be prepared? 1,000 thoughts collided in her mind, questioning whether she could balance this opportunity with the demands of motherhood. With trembling hands, she opened the envelope, revealing guidelines and submission dates. It demanded a portfolio, along with a series of original pieces completed specifically for the show. The deadlines were tight, the expectations high. But Sarah felt a familiar flicker of determination burn within her, a spark ignited in the newness of her reality. Yet as the excitement began to swell, a darker shadow lurked at the edge of her consciousness. She envisioned the late nights spent rushing to meet deadlines while managing her son's needs. The thrill of a gallery opening began to dissipate, overshadowed by sharp doubts. Was she being selfish? Could she chase this opportunity, or would her pursuit of art only lead her to fracture the fragile balance she was trying to maintain at home? "Are you okay? You seem a little overwhelmed," Chris remarked, a note of concern making his tone softer. Sarah swallowed hard, her eyes drifting to the baby monitor. Would the chance to showcase her art mean stealing precious time from her son? "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You won't know until you try," he replied, an unfaltering belief in his words that both comforted and unsettled her. "Just think, Sarah. You could inspire him by going after what you love. You can do this, and I'll help however you need." His encouragement planted a seed within her. It challenged her to confront the insecurities she had been nurturing. But as much as she craved the validation that came with being accepted into a gallery, there was another part of her that feared she would lose herself in the haze of ambition, drowning out the very essence of what she wanted to nurture, her child. That night, she sat on the floor of the dimly lit living room, her son asleep nearby, while a blank canvas stared back at her like an unyielding judge. The first stroke of paint felt daunting, as if she were standing at the edge of an abyss. Suddenly, the descriptor, mother, was dueling with artist for supremacy in her identity, each pulling her in a different direction. Would she have to sacrifice one for the other? The conflicting desires clawed at her sanity. The flickering candlelight danced around her, and as it cast its glow over the untouched palette, inspiration struck. She would intertwine her roles as mother and artist. Her work would reflect her journey, capturing the whirlwind of emotions and experiences that came with being both. But each brushstroke would carry the weight of potential failure and fear. What if the world wasn't ready for this new version of her? With a deep breath, Sarah dipped her brush into the paint, feeling the cool substance wash over her, invigorating her spirit. This was her time, her chance to carve out a legacy for her son that was as vibrant as her own aspirations. Yet, with each bold stroke, uncertainty festered. Was she prepared for the backlash if her art didn't resonate? As the first few colors merged on the canvas, a question loomed larger than life: could she truly meld the chaotic beauty of motherhood with her artistic identity without losing herself completely? The artwork slowly began to take shape, evolving into something both personal and profound. Yet, the external pressure of the approaching deadline tightened its grip on her, making the canvas feel heavier with each passing hour. Just then, a sudden knock echoed through the quiet room, breaking her concentration. The sound echoed, leaving her heart racing again. Who could it be at this late hour? As she opened the door, her breath caught at the sight of an unexpected visitor. Would this be a new ally in her journey, or a harbinger of challenges yet to come? The door swung open to reveal a tall figure cloaked in shadows, his features barely discernible in the dim hallway light. It was David, a former professor of art who had once noticed Sarah's talent during an exhibition at the community center. He had a reputation for being both a fiercely supportive mentor and an intimidating critic. "Sarah," he greeted, his voice a deep rumble. "I was passing by, and I felt compelled to check on you." She hesitated, taken aback by his sudden appearance. "What brings you here at this hour?" His gaze swept over the cluttered living room and finally settled on her canvas, now adorned with splashes of color. "I heard through the grapevine that you're entering the gallery call. I thought I might offer some advice, if you're open to it." The weight of his presence felt both comforting and oppressive. Part of her craved his validation, another part wanted to slam the door and retreat into her doubts. The thought of opening up about her insecurities sliced through the thin veneer of her confidence. "I've just started," she admitted, her voice a mere whisper. "I'm not sure I'm ready for this." David stepped inside, his eyes trained on the canvas. "Art is never about ready. It's about diving into your truth and letting it flow." His words ignited something within her, a flicker of rebellious spirit that churned against the anxiety coiling tightly in her stomach. Yet, the specter of looming responsibilities of her son sleeping peacefully in the other room reminded her of the complexity of her situation. How do you manage it all? The demands of life, the sacrifices? She asked, her heart racing against the backdrop of possible failure. David turned, his expression shifting from mentor to fellow artist. You find a balance, but it's not easy. You will make choices that stir guilt. But remember, your art is an extension of who you are. If you hide it away, you're silencing a part of yourself that your child will eventually need to understand. His reassuring tone invited her to dig deeper into her own doubts. Could she really pursue this opportunity without sacrificing her role as a mother? Sometimes we must be selfish to nurture growth, he continued, eyes narrowing slightly. Your son deserves a mother who is complete and fulfilled, someone who isn't lost in her world but is vibrant and alive in it. He needs to see you thrive. Somewhere in the far reaches of her mind, his words began to resonate. Could pursuing her passion indeed create a legacy worth sharing with her son? Perhaps Chris was right, maybe she could inspire him through her courage and creativity rather than being drawn solely into the cycle of motherhood. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, its rhythm echoing against the muted sounds of breathing from her son's room. Each second tightened the noose of urgency around her. She had to start working relentlessly on her pieces if she was going to meet the submission deadline. Suddenly caught in a spiral of motivation, Sarah caught David watching her, waiting for her next move. Striking a pact with herself, she decided she would push through. Okay, she said resolutely, a newfound conviction lacing her tone. Show me how to channel this energy into a piece that feels authentic. A smile creased David's face, revealing a hint of pride. Let's start from your heart, Sarah. What do you want to say? What part of your journey defines the artist you wish to become? As they began to brainstorm, Sarah felt her heartbeat synchronize with the brush strokes forming in her mind. David's presence propelled her forward, stirring a desire to express the inextricable bond she felt between her roles as mother and artist. But just as her excitement began to swell, an uninvited thought crept in. What if this time she poured into her art wasn't sufficient? What if this new layer of ambition would jeopardize the foundation she had built in raising her son? As doubt wove its way through her resolve, a shrill shriek pierced the air from her son's room, the cry slicing through the moment of inspiration. Let me handle that, David offered, sensing the urgency in her expression as he made his way toward the sound. Wait! Sarah exclaimed. The crossroads before her felt heavier than ever. Would she delegate this moment to someone else or face it herself? The choice loomed large. Could she find the courage to juggle both her roles without losing sight of who she was becoming? She took a step back as David opened the door, the figure of the mentor suddenly getting smaller, leaving her to face the walls of the life she'd built, just as they began to resonate with new colors. If she could capture this feeling on canvas, perhaps she could stitch her dreams and reality together. That was the real question. However, could she truly embrace the entire palette of her identity, or would fear of inadequacy darken the canvas she was creating within her life? As David disappeared down the hall, a new semblance of clarity washed over her. The journey toward finding the answers hadn't yet begun, but she was ready to take the first step, however uncertain it may be. Sarah stood frozen as her heart raced in the wake of the shrill cry from her son's room. The choice she faced was paralyzing, an intersection of her lifelong dreams and the unyielding reality of motherhood. David was yet another reminder of what she aspired to be: a confident artist, capable of navigating her passions while nurturing her child. Taking a deep, steadying breath, she pushed aside the escalating fear bubbling in her chest. She couldn't just leave her son's call to another. This was her moment. She moved toward the door, feeling the texture of the wood against her palms, which seemed to confirm every doubt that crept into her thoughts. What if she wasn't enough? What if confronting this moment meant unraveling the fragile balance she had struggled to maintain? As she stepped into her son's room, the dim yellow light cast a warm glow over the tiny bed, where Chris stirred, his little face scrunched with distress. Cradling him against her chest, she felt a sense of grounding. His small body radiated warmth, in stark contrast to her swirling thoughts of failure. Holding him close, she whispered soothing words, a gentle balm for both their anxieties. "Oh, it's okay, sweetheart. Mummy's here," she cooed softly, feeling a surge of empowerment course through her as he settled against her. That instant reignited the realization that her roles were not mutually exclusive, they could coexist. The notion of nurturing her artistic self while being a devoted mother began to weave into her understanding of who she was. While fear whispered that this was an impossible task, another voice urged her to explore her creativity openly. Returning to the living room, her perspective was undeniably shifted. David was no longer merely a looming presence, he was a beacon, leading her toward a path where her ambitions could flourish alongside her love for Chris. This was her canvas, and she could paint it however she wished. She just needed to begin. "All right," she whispered to herself, as she moved back toward her canvas. A fresh determination buzzed within her. She would use this moment of clarity, harnessing both joy and fear as the strokes of her brush. David had posed a valid challenge. What did she want to say? As the colors on the canvas beckoned her, she thought about her journey, not just the isolation that art could sometimes bring but the vibrancy of life that swirled around it. Each brushstroke became an exploration of her identity, a dialogue between her dual roles. She painted images that symbolized her complexity, a mother bound by love and an artist breaking free from societal confines. As she lost herself in the rhythm of the brush, time folded around her. It reminded her of the value of the remaining hours before her submission deadline. She could no longer dwell in the realm of what-ifs. An hour slipped by, and the quiet of the room settled into a rhythm echoed by Chris's sleepy breaths. Each stroke of paint began to tell a story of its own, glistening colors forming a narrative she had long held captive within. But the pressure of the impending submission dominated her thoughts. Would this be enough? A spiral of doubt threatened her newfound direction, and for a fleeting second, she considered whether her effort might still fall short. Would David think it was adequate? Suddenly, her phone buzzed, drawing her attention to the notifications nipping at her senses. It was a text from her best friend. "Are you ready for the deadline? Have you finished your piece?" It was a simple question, but it felt like a challenge, catalyzing anxiety within her. Instinctively, she responded with a half-hearted "working on it," but as she stared at the blank space where her unfinished thoughts remained, another realization struck her. This was her moment, not just to create, but to confront the fear that questioned her worth. Embracing this duality wouldn't merely be about seeking validation from David or anyone else, it was about being authentic in every aspect of her life. As she looked back at the work in progress, the colors, although not yet complete, resonated with her truth, her anxiety, her love, and her fierce determination. Resolved, she picked up her brush once again, ready to confront both the canvas and the self-doubt that brewed in her mind. With each stroke, she whispered a promise to herself, to be fearless, to embrace failure as part of her journey, and to translate that energy onto her canvas. But as she dove into the creative vortex, a new challenge loomed just above her consciousness, urging her to wonder, if she truly embraced the entirety of her identity, would someone like David accept this grounded version of her, a mother and an artist unafraid? With her heart racing and her brush poised, Sarah prepared for the next step. But as she painted on, she feared the looming submission deadline and wondered if she could truly deliver a piece reflective of the artist she was becoming, a multifaceted individual striving to thrive in both worlds. Because when the moment of truth arrived, would she be able to show both who she was and who she could still become? As the hours melted away, Sarah's focus began to sharpen, yet underneath it lay an ever-churning tide of anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her newfound resolve. The urgent urge to meet the deadline pressed against her chest, tightening with every stroke upon the canvas. The vibrant colors didn't just represent her aspirations, they screamed for validation, for someone to look upon her work and see the intricacy of her dual nature. The sunlight outside faded slowly, casting shadows that danced across the living room, mimicking the turmoil within her heart. With each brushstroke, her thoughts spiraled deeper, pulling her into a relentless cycle of questioning. Recollecting David's steady gaze upon other submissions, she wondered if theirs reflected true artistry or mere facades. Perhaps each was simply a mirror of their creator's ability to curate their projected self, the fascinating blend of talent and preciously cultivated identities. "Why do I need his approval?" she whispered, the question punctuating the air with weight. Her voice fell into silence, the walls echoing back her uncertainty. The more she questioned, the more she felt the fragile thread between her artistic ambitions and her role as a mother thin. She couldn't shake off the voice within that suggested she was a fraud, masquerading as an artist while rushing to fulfill the needs of her son. Chris stirred in his sleep, the sound of his soft whimpers reminding her that those roles weren't at odds, they were woven together in the fabric of her being. Yet, every request for attention felt like a reminder of her priorities pulling apart. How could she balance her artistic drive without feeling that one aspect of her life would suffer? That thought loomed large. Grimacing slightly, Sarah closed her eyes and steadied her breath, remembering Chris's warmth wrapped against her earlier. He was her muse, not simply a responsibility. He deserves a mother who dares to follow her dreams, she reassured herself. The realization forged a spark of determination deep within her. She needed to root her identity not solely in that validation but in the courage to expand beyond it. As she returned to her canvas, this time she painted not merely for submission, but to chart a journey of growth hers and Chris's. She splashed radiant hues still undefined by technique or preference, each stroke propelling her forward rather than dwelling on doubts. A kaleidoscope of emotions infused into the paint manifested visions of sleepless nights mixed with joyful giggles, moments of frustration entwined with those of empowerment. Time slipped further into the night, the deadline looming precariously close. But with each flourish, Sarah realized that the act of creating was a form of liberation. The fear waned, no longer serving as an insurmountable barrier, it transformed into energy that propelled every stroke forward. The phone chimed again, this time with an image from her friend, another artist's submission. The colors sparkled, and she swallowed hard, her heart racing. Yet, something shifted within. She wasn't merely comparing but seeking inspiration. This artist's boldness ignited her own spirit, nudging her to strip away the layers and reveal the rawness of her own truth. What was her story if it wasn't wrapped in both motherly love and self-assertion? Sarah felt the urgency evolve into a request to press forward beyond her fears. Each dynamic swirl, every clash of colors, became a representation of her journey, the inner battle between vulnerability and strength played out across the canvas. "This is me," she declared aloud, her voice stronger, "all of me." But as dawn approached, her bravado was tempered by a creeping question: could she truly submit her work in this raw and unfinished state? Would David recognize her struggle and transformation embodied in every color she splashed upon the canvas? Or would he judge the work solely on technical merit, unable to see the emotional tapestry it represented? As the first rays of sunlight seeped into her space, Sarah stood back for a moment. Observing the piece yet feeling inexplicably unfinished herself. She took in not just the canvas but the tumultuous thoughts spiraling within her. Would a glimpse into her fears strengthen her submission or reveal the weaknesses she tried so hard to conceal? Reaching out toward the work, she hesitated at the looming deadline, knowing she faced more than just capturing her life in paint. She faced a moment of truth. With renewed trepidation, she thought, was she prepared to reveal the profound vulnerability of her artistic expression? Was she ready to embrace her imperfection and lay bare her soul to both David and the world? The vibrant colors on the canvas reflected the turmoil within Sarah, yet outside, a sense of calm settled over her home as dawn painted the walls with soft light. The moment was surreal, a quiet interlude before the storm of nerve and expectation. She stepped back, eyes narrowing while assessing her work, each hue both a triumph and a surrender, breathing life into every dream and doubt she battled. In that clarifying light, emotional chaos transformed into clarity. She recognized the art was indeed a reflection of herself, multifaceted, layered, and not easily defined. But this recognition led to a sharper question: was she comfortable owning this version of herself? The thought unsettled her, tightening the grip of anxiety around her core. Submitting her work meant exposing her most intimate struggles, the very ones she shrouded in shadows away from public scrutiny. Her fingers lingered at the edge of the frame, hovering just above the canvas, the surface still damp from her fervent creation. Closing her eyes for a moment, Sarah breathed deeply, inhaling the potent mix of turpentine and paint. It grounded her, reminding her of the audacity that surged within when she first decided to reclaim her artistry. Art had been her first love, and she realized it was more than a passion, it was her lifeline in the throes of motherhood, the channel through which she could assert her identity screaming to be revealed. Yet, as powerful as this understanding was, intimidation lingered. Questions surfaced like unwanted guests demanding attention. What if David only saw the technical flaws? What if he dismissed her raw expression as unrefined and chaotic? The fear of judgment loomed large, blindsiding her and threatening the previously cultivated determination. A cascade of possibilities ranged from acceptance to ridicule played through her mind, each darker than the last. But she felt a flicker of rebellion ignite at the surface, a resistance to sink into the shadows of self-doubt. She picked up her brush again, heart thrumming wildly beneath her ribs as she decided to add more layering to her creation. Each stroke became a defiance against the impulse to shy away. "I am an artist," she whispered fiercely as colors blended and took shape, a vehement assertion enveloped in the quiet of the room. In that moment, she committed once more. Not just to the canvas, but to herself and her unique voice. Perhaps this submission was not merely a demonstration of artistic ability, it might also be a declaration of self-acceptance. Feeling the brush in her hand shifted the dynamic within her. No longer did she feel like an imposter masquerading as an artist, she began to understand she was an embodiment of every shared story, failures blending beautifully with successes, motherhood intertwined with individual aspiration. As she worked, the notion of vulnerability morphed from fear into strength. Each layer became a shield, a declaration against the voice that insisted she must fit neatly into someone else's expectations. She felt empowered, allowing every brushstroke to resonate with the conviction of her journey. But as the deadline loomed closer, a renewed dread surfaced. What if she didn't have enough time to capture her essence accurately? The moment she decided this was an offering of her truest self felt exhilarating, but alongside that courage lay an undeniable fear. What if embracing imperfection meant a missed opportunity? Would sharing this unfiltered version of herself cripple her journey or liberate it? The clock ticked steadily, its relentless counting echoing the unshakable urgency in her heart. Sarah stood before the canvas, breath constrained by fleeting seconds, forming a shifting resolve within her. She knew she needed to confront the impending moment of truth head-on. With a final, potent stroke, she put her brush down and stepped away once more, allowing the full picture to envelop her. An exhilarating rush washed over her. Could this truly embody everything she wished to convey? Anxiety and excitement twisted together, and she felt an urgent pull, beckoning her towards a resolution she could no longer ignore. Seizing her phone with trembling fingers, she opened the submission link, poised to click send. But in that single heartbeat of anticipation, her mind raced again. What lay beyond this moment? Was she ready to face whatever came next? Her fears, her aspirations, and more than ever, herself? With a deep breath, her thoughts circled back to the emotional tapestry she had woven. It was time, yet she hesitated once more, as a new question took root. What if the world declared her unworthy, when she had only just begun to recognize her own worth? The buzzing anticipation of the morning hung in the air, a tension seeping into Sarah's veins as she stood at the precipice of her decision. The soft light streaming through the window now seemed less comforting and more like a spotlight, illuminating each crease of doubt in her mind. She steadied her breath, attempting to channel the surge of creative energy she had just coaxed from her heart. Each pulse was a reminder that art was not simply about aesthetics, it was the manifestation of her very essence. She glanced at her phone once more, the submission page still open and waiting. She felt an insistent gnawing in her gut, only exacerbated by the impending deadline. What if this was all a mistake? What if she stepped out of the shadows only to be met with ridicule? That familiar impulse to retreat clawed at her resolve, triggering an urgent internal conflict. Was she truly ready to endure the potential fallout of public scrutiny? With a sickening chill, she internalized that this felt like more than just sending a piece of art into the world. It bore the weight of her self-worth, the potential for validation or rejection tightly intertwined. Collecting herself, Sarah clenched her jaw and recalled her earlier convictions. This was not merely about risking her reputation, it was about honoring her truth. In the end, the world will see a reflection, and it either accepts or it doesn't. She reassured herself as she picked up the brush again. Each stroke had been cathartic. It was about revealing the vulnerable parts she had always concealed. She added a few final touches that carried the weight of her emotions in every nuanced stroke. The idea of the world's judgment began to reshape itself into something more manageable, a continuum of possible reactions, each one just as valid as the others. The thought came to her like a bolt of inspiration: real mastery lay in accepting feedback, both positive and negative. Wouldn't that expand her horizons? Wouldn't this submission force her to grow? This notion sparked a flicker of excitement beneath her anxiety. She realized she had spent too long fixating on the fear of critique, aware that negative opinions might bolster the very beliefs she hoped to dismantle. With resolve igniting her heart, Sarah took another deep breath and finally pressed submit. The moment transformed her trepidation into a strange elation, even if the digital clock on her phone still ticked loudly as if to remind her of time slipping away. Spurred by the release of pent-up energy, she set the canvas back upright, studying the finished piece. But with the thrill of submission also came the sudden weight of uncertainty. What next? Would she be expected to create more? She craved to harness the energy from this moment to fuel her next endeavor, but felt the specter of doubt surfacing once again. What if she had already peaked? Was her voice strong enough to convey lasting messages? She felt the pendulum of anxiety swing back, infused with the realization that this was just the beginning. The echoes of potential possibilities stretched out before her. Every moment seemed to cascade into a future filled with new expectations and pressures. As she took a step back from the canvas, she knew she was standing at the edge of transformation, on a precipice where new challenges awaited. Would she embrace them, or would she let fear lead her back into obscurity? Compelled to take action once more, Sarah turned towards her neglected sketchbooks piled on the desk. It was time to dive deeper, to explore the uncharted territories of her talent. An unexplored documentary project about her journey and fears flickered to life in her mind, stark and demanding. Was she ready to embark on this illuminating quest? As she opened the sketchbook, the pages whispering hints of inspiration, she felt the simultaneous thrill of her newfound strength and the encroaching trepidation of what lay ahead. By diving deeper, would she allow herself to stretch beyond the limits she had previously set? The moment balanced precariously between the choice to discover more about herself, to soar, or to retreat. The choices loomed large, and with them, the realization that the true test was not out there in the world but rather within her. Would she pledge to confront her inner critic, or instead allow it to diminish her efforts? The urgency darkened her thoughts as she stared blankly at the pages before her, the weight of her own potential becoming heavier with each tick of the clock. What might she uncover if she dared to embark on this path? As the days unfolded into weeks after her submission, Sarah began to experience a transformation in ways she had not anticipated. The anticipation of feedback from the gallery had initially gripped her with anxiety, but the act of sharing her work, a vibrant exploration of identity as both a mother and an artist, had ignited a fire within her spirit. She leaned into the possibility of rejection, cheekily considering that perhaps it was less about acceptance and more about the journey she had bravely undertaken. Life became a vivid tapestry woven with the chaos of motherhood and the serenity of creative flow. Each morning, as the sun peeked through the window, she welcomed her son Chris's laughter as a muse that breathed life into her inspiration. The noise of crayons now strewn across the floor became the soundtrack of a life rich with potential. She painted alongside him, the two of them creating not just art but a story, a legacy. With each brushstroke, Sarah didn't just cultivate her talent, she nurtured herself. The more she painted, the more confident she became in blending the worlds of motherhood and artistry. Other pieces began to emerge, works that were raw yet beautiful, embodying not just her experiences but the essence of who she had become. Weeks melted into one another, and when the gallery finally reached out, Sarah felt a thrill course through her veins. The message was succinct yet powerful. They wanted to feature her piece, recognizing the profound depth intertwined in each vibrant stroke. They praised her ability to communicate a duality that resonated with their vision for the exhibit. It was at that moment she understood the talent and potential she had long regarded as dormant had been bubbling just below the surface, waiting for her to embrace it. As the opening night approached, Sarah faced the mirror, and for the first time in years, she recognized the woman staring back at her, not just the daughter, the mother, or the artist, but a powerful amalgamation of all those layers. Each fear she had battled, each hesitation she had wrestled with, had been crucial to her evolution. The challenges she once viewed as roadblocks had morphed into the very experiences that shaped her artistry, giving texture and meaning to her work. On opening night, the air buzzed with anticipation. Sarah stood near her canvas, adorned with colors that radiated both chaos and harmony, and she watched as crowds gathered. Conversations flowed, laughter echoed, and she felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment wash over her. David arrived, his pride palpable as he examined the piece. "You've done it, Sarah," he said, his voice thick with admiration. "You've captured a moment of truth that many don't dare express." Recognizing that she had woven both her identity as a devoted mother and a passionate artist into a singular narrative filled with hope was not only liberating, it was transformative. She reveled in the validation but found an even greater satisfaction in knowing she had dared to share her vulnerability and triumphs with the world. As the evening wound down, Sarah exchanged hugs, smiles, and heartfelt congratulations with those who had come to support her journey. Yet amidst the accolades, she recognized her greatest gift was not just being acknowledged for her art, it was in knowing she had taken a leap into the depths of her identity and emerged with her own definition of success. With renewed strength, Sarah promised herself that this was just the beginning. She was ready to continue blending the strokes of motherhood with her artistry, sparking joy that would echo in her work and in the life she built with Chris. Through every challenge, she had carved out a legacy of resilience that would inspire her son to chase his own dreams without reservation. She looked around the gallery, her heart swelling with pride. "I am an artist. I am a mother," she affirmed, her confidence solidified, tethered to her achievements and fully aware of the path she had forged. "Tomorrow, I'll paint again," she whispered, breathing in the possibilities that lay ahead. She was ready to embrace the dual identities she once thought were at odds. Together they formed the vibrant canvas of her life, each color adding complexity and richness. However, even amidst her triumph, she recognized the urgent need to share this journey, to inspire others grappling with similar fears and doubts. In a sudden surge of inspiration, she decided to launch a YouTube channel dedicated to art and motherhood. She envisioned a space where various voices could explore the dualities of identity, fostering a community of conscious creators who embraced every facet of themselves unapologetically. This was her next step, the mission to encourage others to inhabit their truths and empower them to chase creativity alongside their lives. As she returned home that night, Chris snuggled against her side. Sarah couldn't help but smile. The path ahead was bright and uncharted, yet she held a steady conviction: she was more than ready. From that moment onward, Sarah fully embraced her creative identity, championing not just for herself, but for every aspiring artist navigating the intricate dance of life. This was her moment, no hesitation, no retreat, only courage and celebration of the life she had built and the artistry that flowed through her. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that are waiting just for you. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference for our community. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion, and comment below with your reactions and theories about the ending. Show your support, because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of standing together in this journey.